I, as the convener of IWFNEI, take the pleasure of extending a hearty welcome
Good morning to all of you. This is indeed a special day for us to be celebrating. So first of all, I would like to acknowledge the presence of Mr. Sachin Deswal, who is the Deputy Commissioner of Dimapur, as well as Dr. Prashanta Gogoi, who is the Director, Northeast Zonal Cultural Center, Dimapur as well. And my dearest Indigenous brothers and sisters. I express this thanks and welcome you on behalf of all the members of AIPP. Today, I will not share so much about AIPP, but I think if we are celebrating, to make sense of it, or we must understand the significance, why it is meaningful to all of us, and that's what I would like to share a little bit in this bit of time that I have. Let me begin by sharing a little bit of the history so that we are connected, especially for those of you who are new. Indigenous people's issues have started years ago. In fact, it goes back to the time of the League of Nations, when one of the indigenous elders from Canada went to the League of Nations to express and to present the issues that indigenous people were facing. But he was not allowed to enter and address the League of Nations. But some of the head of states took note of that, and some eventual process of conversation started. So international community started recognizing to some extent the issue because of the wild effort made by this brave indigenous elder. Now, why I say this is, even though international community started taking up the issues of indigenous peoples, it was first understood as labor issue that laborers were facing in different countries. And that is why it was the International Labour Organization that first took up the issues of indigenous peoples. And they were trying to address this issue, but somehow the International Labour Organization realized and felt that something is missing. Indigenous people's issues are addressed, are different. It is not merely an issue of the laborers, when the laborers are facing. So it was in this context that for the first time, the international instrument that came into existence is the International Labour Organization Convention 107, right, in 1957. So you can see how much long ago that these things were already taking place. So the government of India signed this ILO Convention 107. And also to the already existing some of the constitutional aspects of it. India had also tried to address by signing the ILO Convention 107. And therefore all this reservation quota system, all these things were introduced. Right? But indigenous peoples in general were not satisfied. Why? Because the ILO Convention recognized that indigenous peoples are temporary societies, meaning that we will be mainstreamed over time and will become the same with the rest of the society. So indigenous peoples are not satisfied. indigenous peoples continue to argue that we are permanent societies with our specific unique identity, based on which we want to progress, develop, and envision our future. So it was quite distinctive, and this distinctive aspect was the challenge for governments to address. So ILO Convention then came up with ILO Convention 169 in 1989 that began to address indigenous peoples as permanent societies. And that is the reason why the government of India, for example, refused to sign, because he felt that this was not what is the situation in India. Now, side by side, the UN had committed to conduct studies and so on. Some of you may be aware of the Martinez-Lobo study, eventually which led to the understanding of what are the specific issues and situation of indigenous peoples. With that understanding, to begin to deliberate a draft declaration on the rights of indigenous peoples, right? And therefore the process started. And the issue became clearer and clearer as ILO 169 also came in 1989. And that is how, in the World Conference, the Vienna Conference in 1993, that indigenous peoples were also invited to speak from Asia for the first time, because international community by and large thought that there were no indigenous peoples in Asia. But today, it is the highest number of indigenous population in the world, right? So the Vienna Conference was significant because that is the time that the world leaders took the decision and took the resolve and committed to resolve the issue of indigenous peoples, mainly for two reasons, and I want to emphasize that. One was that indigenous peoples' issues is a historical issue, and that must be historically addressed. Otherwise, the bloodshed conflict will continue. So, in the interest of world order and world peace, and peace in different countries, the world leaders took the decision and prioritized that indigenous people's rights and issues must be addressed. That was one of it. Second was that the international human rights instruments must be morally reformed, because we already have the Human Rights Declaration, Universal Declaration. But why this was needed was by understanding through the studies and processes that began long ago or decades ago, the uniqueness of indigenous people's issue began to emerge. And that was the collective dimension, and also the worldview and identity and cultural issues that was very specific to indigenous peoples, which at that time the world had not understood. So by working on this UN declaration, the effort was to bring about a moral reform in the international instruments itself, right? So by adopting this UN declaration, what this means is that all member states of the UN should undertake and make the effort to reform its own legal system and jurisprudence and so on, so that it clearly reflects what the UN declaration is saying. But perhaps the problem today is that the UN declaration has been ignored and has not been given the attention that is needed. And therefore, even indigenous scholars, organizations, and movement itself have not really gone deep enough to understand how that kind of reformation can be brought about in the interest of peace and justice. All right? Now, what do I mean by these unique characteristics? Because then the unique characteristics becomes very important in the discourse of indigenous peoples, without which we cannot understand what should be the legal parameters, what should be the parameters of rights under which indigenous people's issues and rights are addressed, right? Now, for example, let's come back to Northeast India where we are. There are many indigenous peoples in the region, and we are one of the native peoples of the region, right? But there are also other native peoples who are not indigenous, if you go by the UN DRIP, and by distinguishing it from the rest by what I am referring to as unique characteristics that all the UN processes and study has been going through and brought out this distinctiveness, right? So for example, indigenous peoples have focused a lot on relationship
And our worldview is quite relational and builds on relationship, right? And the way, one example to distinguish from the rest of the society, for example, why indigenous people fought for this declaration and kept insisting that we are non-state societies, right? That was one of the main factors. And that is to say, even in the pre-colonial times, we did not have a state. Others were organized under state systems, princely states and so on, but we were not, right? So the uniqueness comes from one aspect of that is, for example, look at the land relation in this region, right? If you are in a kingdom, the king is the command and the people are the subjects, right? In a feudal or semi-feudal society, this is what you will see. So land ownership becomes very different, right? At best, you may be a tenant in a kingdom, paying to the princely state to run the state, for example, right? But look at this in our context, where we have always emphasized the special relationship that we have with our land, territories, and resources. What does this mean, right? Meaning that the source of our rights, freedom, worldview is this kind of connection and deep relationship. That's one aspect of it. So, for example, if we don't have a piece of land where we say we have a communal system, community system, and there comes with a bundle of rights, family, individual, etc., etc. My intention is not to explain that. But because we have land, we have access to land, in normal times, I'm sure that none of us have heard about anybody dying from hunger, for example, because the community is there to take care, and you must have access to land. And if I don't have any land, what happens? I cannot negotiate with my neighbors as an owner of a land, of a property, right? To do things together, to look after each of our farms or gardens together, right? Sometimes, okay, I'm going to the field to take care of the canal, water canal. Can you look after my domestic animals? And I'll go and also check your canal because we share the boundary of our fields, for example, right? You have the power to negotiate and build relation with your neighbors and the fellow communities because you have property. You have access to the property and land and so on, right? This, for example, will starkly distinguish you from the pre-colonial states, right? Where you are a tenant or where you don't have anything, and starvation, that's all these things are quite prominent that we have seen in the history. I need not provide evidences for those things. The feminine symbol and the left side represents the masculine symbol. So it's not separate, but it is to say that everybody embodies this. And the way you embody it is the way that you create a more peaceful kind of society. So when we say that Mother Earth is the feminine symbol, what this is representing is the creativity, the innovation, the life giver, the sustainer of life. These are not trivial things. But what can be greater? What can be more powerful than being able to sustain life, for example? But we are trivializing a lot of these things, and perhaps that's one of our problems. Creativity itself, you will see all these shawls, traditional clothes, textiles that we wear, were all domain of women. They created all these creative things, beautiful things, right? So, for example, in the Angami, the story goes to be very short. In the stone, in the forest, something was inscripted which nobody could read, but it was only the women who could read. Meaning that women found that creativity to access what is beautiful, what is artful, things that fit together, and things that can express joy, successes, and so on, right? It goes like that, and that's the fact with most of the indigenous communities, I would say. And in the textiles that we use, for example, there is also a symbol which is called the eyes of the loom. What this means is that is the key, that is the doorway through which you can access this abstract art, beauty, and then bring it back forth into kind of a visual art. And that is what is all representative of women, and primarily the domain of women, which I don't think we can argue, for example, in any case, right? That is why we have to recognize, the celebration is about that women has to be recognized as right-bearing agents, right? Therefore, equality of rights, equality of opportunity are fundamental if we have to make the society grow and be sustained in a more harmonious way, building on that kind of a relationship that we are talking about. Because, of course, I'm not talking so much about the masculine symbol, but what the indigenous worldview is saying is that when the Father Sky and the Mother Earth meet together and coalesce, and mingle and dance together, that is where this creativity, innovations, prosperity, order emerges. That's what is the indigenous worldview, in some of the indigenous traditions. And some traditions expresses this much more clearly than the others, but I essentially take it that this is quite universal among indigenous peoples. And that is the important aspect that we need to embody both as individuals. It's not divided between man and woman, but embodying that creates that relationship of harmony, right? That is essentially the point. I was asked to stick to 20 minutes, so I have 30 seconds. I conclude here by saying, therefore, when we talk about indigenous people's rights and indigenous flags or symbols that we talk about, this is what it should represent. That is in terms of our uniqueness and the richness that we have. And that is the time only when we see the meaning. The problem today is that we're losing that machinery of meaning making in our lives, which was driven by the relational aspect of our worldview and so on. Thank you very much for listening.
It's a matter of proud privilege for me to stand amongst you all for this celebration of this International Day of the world's indigenous people, and also the role of women predominantly and most importantly in the lives of the indigenous people. So it's a very, very momentous occasion today that we are celebrating, especially in the context of our country in the northeastern region. What we see, how we have come this far and what the future holds for us. I think it's a very, very great opportunity for us to put our brains together, put our hearts together and decide what is the way forward. How can we take this, the indigenous motto that we have with our future generations also going forward. As we know, the role of the indigenous people, if we say, it's very, very important to other parts of the country and the world. For me, I've been in Nagaland for almost 10 years now. I've been serving in different parts of the state, and this is only my first posting in Dimapur. So Dimapur predominantly, it's like a mini India. We have people from the mainland India. We have Rajasthanis, Biharis, Bengalis, Assamese, you name it, and they are here. And besides that, we have all the Naga tribes. We have Gurkhas, we have Maos, innumerable communities which are coexisting peacefully in Dimapur. I don't think so there will be any other district which with a smaller population in our entire country where the mix of population and the people is so rich. I think Dimapur can be used, the word mini and micro India actually fits in here. And it shows the beauty of the place and how the communities have been coexisting with each other. Now, indigenous people, as the theme itself, is the role of indigenous women in the preservation and transmission of traditional knowledge. I think more so when we visit different districts. For me, I am from Uttar Pradesh. Of course, I have come to Northeast before my service as a tourist, but when I actually my cadre was announced, I was going to Nagaland cadre. Of course, there was a sense of excitement also. There was a sense of anxiety also. That what is this place? How the people will be? How will I survive there? So many things that cross your mind. Of course, I have had friends from Nagaland, from Manipur in my college in Delhi University, But then again, to come and live and settle, it was a different different set of feelings. But when I landed here, when I used to interact with the people, it was of course a sea of change from the culture where I come from, the food that I eat, the religion which I follow. But then there were so many good things which I could learn from Nagaland. Even when people in my back, when I go once in a year, when I visit my hometown, people ask, how is the place? And I say, I can't explain to you. Actually, I can't explain in 5 minutes what is Nagaland to them. I said, you should come and experience, and then you will only know what Nagaland it is. So, and many of my friends in the last 10 years, they have visited and they have had so many fond memories of this place. So this shows what kind of, even if you are posted in Mokokchung, you go to Phek, the things are different. You go to Twensang, so many diverse practices are there, so many diverse intellect is there. The role of women, especially in the environment protection, it becomes very, very important. We see we have small communities, we have those community conserved areas where the major role is now being played by women. Of course, there may not be any formal organization as such, and in the village council also you may not find many women. I don't think there will be hardly any. But then still the guards of the community assets are the women. The guards of the granaries are still the women. So these are the traditional knowledge which needs to be inculcated to the future generation. Last year I was representing our Chief Secretary in the NPSC interviews. So I got an interaction to interact with many of the bright youngsters of the state in the commission during the interview board. So majority of them, they may be Kumangan, they may be Changs, they may be Yumkins Aus, but besides Dimapur and Kohima, people have not gone. Even I was Deputy Commissioner in Phek headquarters, those of you who have visited. The geographical position is a bit remote, as in, no, you don't need, even people call it the world's dead end, that you don't cross Phek and reach anywhere. So even people staying in Futsiro, they have never visited Phek. It was such a surprise for me, people not visiting the district headquarters as such. I think my appeal is, with so many wonderful people of representing their communities, their own tribes, I think we should be more adventurous. At least as far as our state is concerned, we should not only concentrate ourselves in Dimapur and Kohima, because this is what is the biggest challenge the indigenous people are facing. Today, I was just reading about some facts. There are about 2,600 languages, indigenous languages, and which is, if they are not inculcated, if they are not transferred, then it may get extinct in this coming decade. It's a huge number, 2,600, and I don't know, majority of, I think more than 50% we can find in the northeastern part of our country. So I think it becomes it's the collective asset of our own people, and we have to safeguard that and protect that. That is why I'm saying we should encourage our youngsters, at least, if not every month, it's not possible, but at least during the festivals, during Christmas time, one should go visit his village, feel the lifestyle, interact with the elders, then only we can preserve it. Otherwise, the progression and the changes in civilization is so fast, and with the lesser number of population, within no time people will lose their relevance, and the waves of globalization will sweep each and every one. So I think it's a challenge that we have ahead, and we should positively take it and encourage our youth also. As the role of indigenous women, it's become very important when I also interacted. I'm just sharing what I have experienced during my stint in Nagaland. I was there in Mokokchung again. There's a village known as Khar village. So they have some, I'm forgetting the name of that indigenous medicine. So whenever you have any, say you have an upset stomach, or you say you have any gastric disorder, so I just happened to be on my village visit, and the village council chairman, he offered me that. So I was also very skeptical. What is this? Is it intoxicating or anything? Then it's just for your natural your gut. So I had that, and it was amazing. I would say I used to feel so fresh, and it's not a medicine also. It's just with your meal you can take it, and still with the DCs posted there, I have even taken it back home, given it to my parents also. This is the rich diversity. This is just an incident I'm saying. I don't know how many things like is still being practicing in other tribes as well. Last year I was posted in Department of Agriculture as additional secretary. I went to Chizami village where in Peg district, the northeastern network, the NEN, I think they had organized one event on the World Environment Day, if I'm not wrong. So there they had exchange of seed program. So it was a beautiful program. Even ladies from Noklak, if I'm not wrong, they visited. From Chizami area, from Chozoba area, ladies were there, and they were exchanging the knowledge, exchanging the seeds. Few had Kholar from Noklak, few had Kholar from Chunsang, and the confidence with which they knew that within these 2 weeks, from say, for example, in July you have to sow, or it's so precise, and people were surprised. Even in Chizami, people, they do not know. They were asking questions. Itu guti to ami halishe ami laga mati te ulana hai. So it's because of the absence of knowledge and the traditional knowledge sharing. So it was a very, very enriching experience for me also. And people were also sharing that the benefits of these seed sharing that has occurred. The harvest has gone up. The infestation by the pest has also gone down. So these are the little rich resources, knowledges that we have. But then only because of lack of documentation and sharing, it's slowly and slowly getting lost. So to document those indigenous knowledges also become very, very important, because if we see men like me, we can just talk, but women are the ones who act. So I think it becomes very, very important for our women who have taken the burden till date. They have carrying the flag high, and also I'd request to take that extra burden also. At least you should try to document whatever knowledges, whatever practices that we have, because unless and until we document things, many things get forgotten. And this is the problem why we are facing. Nagas, they have always been sovereign people living in their own villages. It's even historically known as a village country. But now in 2022 we experience, as an administrator, I have experienced many villages, they have boundary disputes. They keep fighting with each other. Kunba hevo rati te kheti kati dibo. Kunba jabo tai khan laga pani kati dibo. So many things are happening. It's only because we don't have documentation. The villages have been coexisting peacefully. Even the present inhabitants of the villages, they don't know how their ancestors peacefully existed. They don't know that. That is the problem. They don't know what the relation between one range with the other range was. And it's natural to get lost. So if we document that history, yes, this is how we progressed from 1950s to 2000. This was the relation. Going ahead, this is the relation that we can further share. And if we can document that and share with our people, I think this will really help us to coexist in a better way. So these are the little things which I wanted to share with the audience today. I won't take much of your time, but my just humble appeal is, whatever we have to push our youth forward. Our youth, the era of the folk tales, the grandmas telling stories in the night, it is all getting lost. It's now all the era of iPads and mobiles and tabs. But then if we have to protect our rich culture, if we have to carry our traditional knowledge forward, I think the onus is on the elderlies. We should be projecting it in a way it's interesting to them, and also making them proud of the rich heritage that the generation has been carrying forward. So with these few words, I'd like to congratulate the entire indigenous community on this wonderful day, and I hope and pray that in all spheres of life, whether it be the scientific era or more especially in our context in Nagaland, in the political decision making. I think this is where the women are lacking. They are not getting the opportunities. Also, we have been wanting for a female face in the assembly for so long. I think this is when at the highest decision making body of the state assembly, if we can have the abled women who are all here, I think our state will also grow and progress simultaneously, coexisting with the natural traditional knowledge that we have. So thank you very much and congratulations once again.
Really, I feel honored to be part of this program. And right now, you have seen the chicken dance from Chakazan tribe. And I am very happy that Mr. Fasau, he is one of our officers.
Here's the latest news
From Northeast Zone Cultural Center. And I feel proud that at least my zone has represented here with a cultural program. But I have heard, you all have heard the voice of this male cock, isn't it? So some female voice should be also, yeah, just like this. So that can be incorporated. Anyhow, this celebration of celebrating this International Day of World's Indigenous People, August, really, we feel that it's very important for us. And next time, another support will be with you, that is from NIWA, from next time. Everyone knows that in our Northeast, women played a big role in transmission of each and every culture, that from food to clothes to every tradition. So we want that from NIWA, we will make it a bigger program like this one. As you know, out of more than 500 or 600 tribes of India, more than 272 tribes are in Northeast itself. So Northeast is a typical region of North India that we are following these traditional systems, indigenous knowledge, any kind of food habits, ethnic foods, then our costumes, our cultures, our cuisines, everything is indigenous, ethnic. So we think that from next time, NIWA will be a part of your organization in promotion, in promoting and in preserving each and every indigenous culture of this region, and let the world discover us, who we are. You know that United Nations, they are giving much more emphasis in protecting this indigenous culture of each and every type of people in the whole world. We are losing our own culture, but we are celebrating our festivals in a different way. So right now, we think that NIWA is taking up such kind of festivals with proper decisions along with local organizations just like this one, that in future what we are doing, what we will be celebrating, it should be totally in collaboration with you. That is the Women's Forum for Indigenous Women's Forum from Northeast India or like that. And we want to represent our culture in different places outside Northeast also, along with our organizations. You know, I am born and brought up at Arunachal Pradesh. In here now in Nagaland, being the director, I have seen it. People talk about handloom, isn't it? There is a Ministry of Handloom and Textiles. Why not loin loom? People never talk about loin loom. আমি বাচ্চা টাইম থাকাতে আমাৰতো পুৰা লয়েন লুম দে কাপোৰখন বনাই থাকিছে এইটোতো কেতিয়াবি গভৰ্ণমেণ্ট পৰা তাখান পৰা ডিচিশ্যন বি নলে that we have to promote loin loom. World Handloom Day is there. Why not loin loom? In Southeast Asian countries, I have seen that most of us here, not only in Northeast region, in most of Southeast Asian countries, we have seen loin loom. My friend Ruben Masangba, we are working together. He's a great artist. He's a Padma Shri awardee, isn't it? He is doing such kinds of promoting ethnic musics. So along with ethnic music, we are promoting ethnic costumes also. We are promoting ethnic food also. So our indigenous women can play, our indigenous people can play a bigger role in promoting our own culture. Whenever I used to go to different countries, I always used to put my own traditional dress or like that. People used to see, so from which country? From the, that makes feels me proud that yes, I'm from India. That this is my culture, this is my dress, this is my ethnic wear or like that. So we must keep our tradition intact. This is our identity.
Today, it is not merely organizing this particular Indigenous Day, but merely asserting our right and marking as our identity is a day of today. And I think we're really thankful to our international forum who has really recognized our rich culture, our rich civilizations, our rich habitations that we have been belonging to this country, to this Northeast region. So therefore, we are really proud. Imagine when we are one of the oldest civilizations, and in fact, we need to assert our right from whom we never knew from whom. Because we are being termed as a tribal, but nowhere in the Indian constitutions, nowhere in the law of land that the tribal word is existing. If we really emphasize the meaning and understanding of the tribals, I mean it is really uncivilized. But today, the international forum has given us the identity, saying that these people are the son of soil, who has really looked into mountain, who has really looked into forest, who has really looked into land, and who has really looked into water, streams, and so forth. So we are the owner of this land. We are the owner of this son of soil. But today, when we became a part of India, today we are being known as a tribal. So from today, we are urging the government of India, please don't call us tribals. Call us with our own identity. That would be the most appropriate.
This year's theme is really the need of the hour. If we look at the position of the woman in Northeast India, and also I would like to, particularly talking about our own woman, Karbi woman. Traditionally, in our community, it is the woman who played a very important role, right from household work to other activities, right from birth to death of a person. In every occasion, it is the woman who used to play a very important role, and without woman, nothing is possible. And it is our mother, our sisters, who knows our nature, who are very well versed what to eat and what not to, which are going to heal us, which are not going to heal us, which are going to have a bad impact on us. So what we feel is that this year theme is the need of the hour, as we have to carry on our tradition which is there since time immemorial. It is the woman who used to cook us a good delicious food. It is the woman who used to make homemade or handmade apparels which are keeping our tradition alive. So I won't take much time as I have been allotted only 2 minutes. It's a very precious 2 minutes. So lastly, I would like to thank IWFNEI for creating this opportunity for all the indigenous peoples of Northeast India to come together and celebrate this very important day here in Dimapur. And I hope that this coming together is going to be a historic event for creating more such platform for interaction, for promoting our own culture, our tradition, and of course, keeping our own rights, raising our voice against all the problems that we have been facing.
Today, indigenous women taking the lead as a promoter and the practitioners of our unique cultural heritage. Indigenous women are the backbone of the indigenous peoples, communities, and thereby plays a huge role in preserving, reviving, retaining, and transmitting the traditional ancestral knowledge. However, despite the significant role played by our women, they are often faced with discrimination at different levels, risking their life, risking the right to self-determination. But at the same time, we cannot ignore the crucial role played by them. Therefore, it is important to restore and acknowledge the real role of our indigenous women. The Naga people's movement for human rights take this opportunity to celebrate, honor, and express solidarity with the indigenous women for their leadership and contributions towards a sustainable and equal future.
So this is a cicada sound.
Clever dear indigenous brothers and sisters from in Northeast India and distinguished guests, especially the Deputy Commissioner and the Director of Northeast Cultural Zone. This Tozalapa, Namaste and indigenous greetings from Nepal. I am coming from Nepal as a representative of indigenous people in Nepal. So it's my immense pleasure to be here to celebrate this Indigenous Peoples' Day with indigenous brothers and sisters in Northeast India, and which is hosted by IWFNEI. And you can see this is supported by Asia Indigenous Peoples Pact and Network of Indigenous Women in Asia, and also in partnership with AIPP's members. Especially we have 5 members here in Northeast India, and it is important day for all of us, since all the indigenous peoples from across the globe are celebrating this Indigenous Peoples' Day with key messages, and we have already seen that number of messages and also the key commitments, and we have seen some of the commitments from the government part as well, like the cultural zone also gave some commitment to collaborate in coming days in the future. More importantly, we have to celebrate this, and we have been celebrating as a part of beginning of the whole year, because this is not for just a celebration for a day, because we also need to continue our commitment in the coming days throughout the year, so that we will be able to implement all those commitments and into actions by different means and different approaches. And Deputy Commissioner also mentioned about the documentation part, which is very important, and we can document in different forms, not necessarily in the written forms. Maybe we can document in video forms, audio forms, and many other forms, which can at least preserve some of the indigenous knowledge and practices we have done. And it will be also helpful for us to also transmit to the younger generation, which we have already mentioned that. So documentation can be formed in different possible form, which we have to decide like which will be the appropriate form for us to continue that documentation. And this year the theme is very clear, that role and contribution of indigenous women in transmission and also preservation of this traditional knowledge. And being Asia Indigenous Peoples Pact with the Indigenous Women's Program and also the Network of Indigenous Women in Asia, the visibility of these indigenous women and their contribution in preservation and transmission has been increasingly appreciated and also acknowledged. This is also one of the examples you have seen. The theme of this year's celebration is role of indigenous women in transmission and preservation of the traditional knowledge. So we have to continue that. We have to emphasize the role of indigenous women, since they are the guardians of forests and the families, and they have multiple roles in family, in society, as a producer, as a preserver, protector, caregiver, caretaker, and knowledge holder, and also the transmitter of the knowledge, transmitter of the culture, and transmitter of the language. And we have also discussed about importance of language to the younger generation. For your information, the UN has announced the decade of indigenous language from 2022 to 2023. So this is another era of preserving our language and transmission of our language to the younger generation. Moreover, the indigenous women are the backbone of indigenous family and society, with their crucial role in preservation and transmission of the knowledge and the practices and the skills. Also, they have been contributing, in fact leading many collective advocacy and lobby and campaigns for defending the rights to land, territory and resources, and also to some extent in the conflict management in many of the indigenous society. So we have been hearing some of the examples in Northeast India as well. So this needs to be continuously documented and also promoted in other parts of the world. And I'm also glad that we have seen the AIPP members, especially the 5 members from Northeast India. They are coming together for this important celebration today, and also having some kind of key messages and commitment to work together in coming days, which is very important. And also the AIPP also prioritizes to support indigenous people's organizations, especially the member organizations in the region, and also the partners, so that this can be collectively strengthened and also amplify the voices and also the solidarity and cooperation among indigenous peoples organizations for the recognition of indigenous peoples, indigenous women, indigenous youths, and indigenous persons with disabilities rights and recognition. For your information, we have also started some of the work on promotion and also recognition of indigenous women with disability or indigenous person with disability as well. So that is also another chapter we have started and needs to be continued. And this joint celebration of indigenous peoples in Northeast India certainly give positive message to the world. Like we are also in live stream in the Facebook of the NIWA. So which is kind of positive message towards the, all of the people watching this live stream. And I'm quite confident that this solidarity and cooperation among the indigenous peoples and also the indigenous brothers and sisters in Northeast India will continue, and which will be kind of helpful for working collectively in solidarity for the rights and recognition of the indigenous women and indigenous peoples in coming days. And AIPP would be happy to be part of this whole process as technically providing support and also the financial support to amplify and secure the rights of indigenous people, indigenous women, and we are committing for that. Jai Adivasi. This is just a brief message from my side, being a Deputy Secretary General of Asia Indigenous Peoples Club. Thank you very much.
Hello everyone, I'm Susie from Indigenous Papua people, and I'm from Taiwan. This is my daughter. Her name is Mira. We want to celebrate Indigenous Day with you all there. Indigenous women are the key solution, key knowledge holder, and also the whole life keeper of indigenous people. When we talk about how to respect indigenous rights, yes, please don't forget your daughter, wife, mama, or grandma. They are the ones who take care of the family, friends, and the whole family, especially poor groups. So, just like to send our regards from NIWA and HIGA, AIPP.
Namaste and good afternoon. I'm here to read the Declaration of Indigenous Peoples of Northeast India. We stand here today because of our ancestors who have walked before us, and we hold our responsibilities to those who will follow us as sacred, and we recognize and thank the indigenous people on whose land we meet today. We have withstood untold sufferings from pre-colonial to the post-colonial era and have survived even near annihilation of our homelands. We have rose time and again, and we stand proud, refusing to perish because of our undaunting spirit of freedom that we have inherited from our ancestors. We commemorate the International Day of the World's Indigenous Peoples as a common symbolic victory and in acknowledging our appreciation towards states and international community in recognizing the equal importance of extending the International Covenant on Economic, Social and Cultural Rights and the International Covenant on Civil and Political Rights, as well as the Vienna Declaration and Program of Action, and affirming the fundamental importance of the right to self-determination of all peoples, by virtue of which they freely determine their political status and freely pursue their economic, social and cultural development. We are convinced that the recognition of the rights of indigenous peoples enshrined in the UN Declaration of the Rights of Indigenous People will enhance harmonious and cooperative relations between the states and indigenous people and with all societies based on principle of justice, democracy, respect for human rights, non-discrimination and good faith. Thereby, we, the members of Asia Indigenous Peoples Pact, Indigenous Women Forum of Northeast India, Naga People's Movement for Human Rights, Karbi Human Rights Watch, Borok Indigenous Tribal Peoples Development Center, and Zo Indigenous Forum solemnly proclaim the Declaration of Indigenous People of Northeast India to be pursued in a spirit of partnership and mutual respect. That our struggles to restore our right to self-determination through self-governance is a social necessity, and for the free determination of our political status and pursuance of our economic, social and cultural development. We stress that our struggle for self-determination is for democratization that encompasses our communitarian forms of democratic governance, indigenous worldview, and universal human rights principle. Second, that our customary institution, governance system, and customary laws, which are firmly rooted in our worldview and ethos, underpinned by the values of justice, fairness, and inclusiveness, have been greatly weakened by the imposition of state structures and alien legal system, and the influence of foreign cultures. Third, that the continuity of our relationship with our lands, territories, and resources, and the preservation of our identity through our own language, religion, and customs is continually under threat by means such as militarization, unsustainable development programs, displacement, cultural domination, and imposition of alien education system. Fourth, that despite the heroic struggles and contribution of indigenous women against militarization in peacemaking and in the preservation and propagation of indigenous society, inroads that have been made in empowering and advancing the rights of indigenous women have not been adequate, and there continue to be significant challenges in securing their equal treatment, particularly in land rights and decision-making process within our political spheres. Fifth is that the challenge posed by the loss of biodiversity and unprecedented rate of climate change is spurring erratic widespread events spanning borders that potentially threatens people's life, welfare, and world peace. We as people with intimate symbiotic relationship and directly dependent on environment, our survival is at grave risk. The crisis wrought by biodiversity loss and climate change implicates moral and political responsibility for all states and people to come together to ignite transformation from local to global levels. And the sixth point is that despite the headway and opportunities provided with the adoption of the UN Declaration on the Rights of Indigenous People, we are concerned that not much progress has been made in achieving the rights enshrined in it, and that governments in India are reluctant to embrace it. Having committed ourselves to the above and affirming that all doctrines, policies, and practices based on our advocating superiority of peoples or individuals on the basis of national origin or racial, religious, ethnic, or cultural differences are racist, scientifically false, legally invalid, morally condemnable, and socially unjust, we call on the government of India to acknowledge that indigenous people in the country have suffered from historic injustice as a result of inter alia, their conquest, colonization, and dispossession of their lands, territories, and resources, thus preventing them from exercising, in particular, their right to self-governance and self-determined development in accordance with their own needs and in service to the larger society as well. To undertake prompt review of the peace accords, agreements, and other arrangements made with indigenous peoples of Northeast India for rectifying its inherent weaknesses and defects to comply with the minimum international standard as set out in the UN Declaration on the Rights of Indigenous People and other human rights instruments. Such peace accord agreements and arrangements include inter alia with the Boroks of Tripura, the Karbis and other indigenous people of Assam, the indigenous people of Mizoram, Manipur, Meghalaya, and Arunachal Pradesh. To evoke its commitment to the Indo-Naga peace process that has dragged on for 25 years without solution at sight, it has lost its momentum, and a breakdown will be detrimental to the peace in the region and the potentiality of boosting a meaningful democratization process in the region towards a transformative resolution of political conflict will be derailed. The government of India must refresh its memory and learn the lesson that the current peace talk is the result of the hard efforts of committed leaders and intellectuals from both sides, which was broken which was brokered 25 years ago after more than 5 decades of bloody armed conflicts with heavy casualties on both sides. To recognize the contribution of demilitarization of the lands and territories of indigenous people to peace, economic and social progress, and sustainable development, understanding and friendly relation among different communities and the larger society of the country and the world, and urgently repeal all extra constitutional laws, especially the Armed Force Special Powers Act 1958, and initiate withdrawal of its armed forces from the region. Thank you.
Chairperson Ayu for having me here to read out the statement of IWFNEI. Statement of Indigenous Women's Forum of Northeast India on International Day of the World's Indigenous People, today the 9th of August 2022. We, the members of Indigenous Women's Forum of Northeast India, have come together in solidarity with all indigenous women in Asia and indigenous peoples organizations in Northeast India for the recognition of our rights and to reclaim our roles in the preservation and transmission of indigenous knowledge. We are dismayed that states have not shown true commitment to implement the UN Declaration on the Rights of Indigenous Peoples. We therefore call on states to fully recognize the importance of implementing the UN Declaration on the Rights of Indigenous Peoples for democratization of states and to promote genuine pluralism for peace and justice. Currently, we have 9 unit members of IWFNEI. They are Kuchdoa Janamar Jyoti Block Mahasangha, Zema Mothers Association, North Kachar Hills, Tangsa Women Welfare Association, Arunachal, Naga Women's Union, Zomi Mothers Association, Lai Women Association, Naga Indigenous Women's Network, Tuinsang Women Welfare Society, and Borok Women Forum from Tripura. Thank you.